Good morning, everybody, and this is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort. Hope everybody has a good day. Today is Tuesday. It's like 5:50 a.m. and time for my morning walk. Yeah, so far I think I did like the tweet that said, "Hey, I'm doing stuff on Discord." Then I posted on YouTube yesterday, and so it seems like we've got a new batch of people who are watching these videos, so hopefully you guys are enjoying them. Today I made sure to bring the questions with me on a piece of paper so I don't forget them. So I don't have to stress myself too hard here. But yeah. Yesterday, by the way, was a really good day. I just spent the entire day basically making sure that the balance for some of the big changes coming in 14.5 were as good as they could be. So that was, I don't know, I love the days where I just get to sit and like work on TFT and design TFT and do that kind of work. Those are the best. Just quiet, uninterrupted game development. Those are good days. So, cool. Okay, questions. Okay, first one was, we announced that we are closing Hyperroll because it's only 2% of hours. And so the question was, well, can you tell me what percent of hours are all the other modes, and what does that mean for you as a developer? Now, obviously, I can't just disclose the exact percentages without Riot's permission. I do know what they are, give or take, but I'm not allowed to say. So what I can do, though, is kind of like I did with the augment stats in that last video. I'll put it into buckets, right? We'll call... If Hyperroll is low, let's say we'll just have low, medium, and high, okay? Those will be our three buckets that I'll be talking about. So, for example, Hyperroll is low, like we talked about. Talker's Trials is our other low mode. But Talker's Trials was specifically designed to be low. One of the product goals with that mode was that people wouldn't hang out there and play 100 games of Talker's Trials. That was specifically not what we wanted to do. We wanted it to be a mode where you would just, play a couple games, learn the set, and then if you wanted more, go play the actual PvP mode. So it being low is like, your question was, what does that mean for us as a developer? That means Talkers was a success. It did exactly what we wanted it to do. Cool. Good stuff. As far as our medium modes go, that is Double Up and Normals. Double Up and Normals are our medium modes. And, what that tells us, because obviously a spoiler, ranked is in high, is that people who enjoy core TFT definitely like some form of progression or a goal to go with it, right? You don't just play games in the abstract over and over and play lots of games. You play to achieve a goal. And so the difference between normal and ranked, even if someone's only like gold, we have lots of players who might be, say, gold and have played 500 games in a set, but it's still a goal for them, right? A goal to improve, a goal to move that number up is important for that mode. And so that's what that tells us about the difference between normal and ranked. As far as Double Up goes, so Double Up is a mode where you can play with a friend. And this is something we knew from League of Legends, and just frankly, you can tell from any game dev. If you have a single player game, and then you make it co-op, you've immediately shrunk your audience about 70-80%. The reality is gaming is, most of the time, a solo, time waster, or whatever you call it, time relaxation event, however you want to phrase it. But playing games by yourself is the most common version. Now, it's interesting, and I could do a whole talk on this, about how playing games with friends is way more fun. But that's just a natural thing of your audience, is that there's going to be less solo play, or less co-op play. But that's expected, and so Double Up is, it's a medium mode. And then we have our high modes. I already said ranked was a high mode. The other ones that jump out as high modes are Chonk's Treasure, Pengu's Party, those sort of like really high variance, exciting modes. Those tend to do very well. Players really, really like playing those. which is funny because if you watch a streamer, let's say you're in the streaming community, you might think those modes are low, but no, they're high. And then the other one is set revivals. Set revivals are often high because what we find is that generally, 2 months into a set, people have met their goals. People are like, hey, I'm kind of, getting a little good with this set, but you know what would help? I'd love to play some new content. And so they'll go play a set revival. And that'll get a bunch of hours. And so the set revival now has that other progression system as well. And that really helped set revivals as well. But those are our high modes. And so generally we look at that pattern and we're pretty happy with that overall. But yeah, hyper roll was just the weird oddity where it was like a ranked competitive mode, but the engagement was so low. So it was like, what purpose is it really serving? It also, compared to double up, hyper roll needs a lot more custom, tuning. Considering the games are only half as long, the stages were completely different. Like Anima Squad launched in hyper roll, and it was like Anima Squad scales with stage. So, stage 7 Anima Squad does a lot of damage. Well, stage 7 in hyper roll, not that crazy. So, yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, so that's an approximate rundown of the hours. Again, I can't give you specific hours, but hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of approximately who's playing what mode. And like I said, nothing in there is that surprising, right? It's like people play ranked, people play the new thing that's out, and they have fun, So, yeah, there you go. All right, what was the next one? Again, I brought paper today. I was smart because I wrote down 5 of them. Okay. So we removed augment stats, and generally this has been positive for the game. So the question is, why not remove stats for items, champions, traits, etc.? This is a really complicated question. It's a really fun one. And it's going to depend on your playstyle and your personality and what you like and don't like. And I'm going to start with an anecdote. I used to play poker for fun. I never gambled much or anything like that, but just for fun with my friends. And about a year ago, I went to a bachelor party with those same college friends. And we were talking about poker. And they said, oh yeah, stats have ruined poker. Apparently, the meta in poker nowadays is there is a table that's based on your hand and based on the conditions. This is exactly what you should do. And everyone just plays poker like a flowchart without even looking at their opponents or thinking about it's just play this flowchart. And so they were like, stats have ruined poker. And I bring this up because this is kind of true for every game. If you played, we're at the uphill part already. If you played Magic the Gathering back in the day, you would build decks, but there weren't really stats to be this is the deck that's performing the best or anything like that. Fast forward to Hearthstone, and it would be this card has exactly X% in arena. Here are the decks that are doing well. And stats have essentially boiled everything down to here's the answer to play. The problem is, so it's why not do everything in your power to block all the stats? Well, first off, the cat's already out of the bag, right? Even if we hypothetically blocked everything, players would begin to create those stats themselves. Whew, early morning. Walking off dinner last night. Players would create those stats themselves, even if they weren't as good. It's just that human tendency for knowledge to try to figure out what's best, what's doing well. You see this all the time with fighting game community tournament results. And they'll use those to make stats. Even though there's no stats for characters, Smash Brothers is notorious for this. You'll see how many times each champion won a major, or it's just our need to quantify everything down. Whew. But the other angle of this is that stats, like if you look at like tactics.tools right now as an example, a lot of players really like these sites as a learning thing. Hilariously enough, if you watch the double up event, I think Saikuno, in the way he plays TFT, is a good example of this. Saikuno has picked his favorite comp, which is Twisted Fate, and he enjoys logging in and playing Twisted Fate. And that's just what he enjoys. That's how he likes to have fun with the game. And the reality is, from what we can tell, that's not a small... The portion of the audience that plays TFT like that, not small. Not everybody is willing to go in and play at the very like adaptive, let me figure it out. And so if we said, hey, there's no stats, there's no anything like that, it creates a situation where a lot of those players will feel lost and they may not enjoy TFT as much, which is unfortunate because I will say my personal play style is I do not enjoy, what the stats do to the game, but I don't make games for me, I make games for our audience. And a lot of people in our audience do enjoy that, They do enjoy going, here are the 3 or 4 comps I want to play and do well with and not feel like I'm going to be punished, right? Because TFT does have a steep learning curve. And, that learning curve can be very daunting without being able to go, oh, so if I want to play Twisted Fate, here are some of the items I should maybe suggest to build. Now, internally, we are talking about how we need to do better in-game. So an example of this is like, right now, if you highlight Twisted Fate and you mouse over the item recommendations, it shows 8 items. But let's be real. Does Twisted Fate have 8 items he can use? No. He needs a Ginsu's. And then there's like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 on a good day items you can put on him. We should probably tell you that, So, there are things we can do to help this as well. But the reality is also, we've talked about this before, no match history. That's another one, like being able to share, how your last game went and things like that. We would have to eliminate match history to even consider this. So the trade-offs just don't seem worth it. But all of this also goes back to how people interpret stats. I keep going back to Vex this set. If you go back and look at Vex in the first patch of data, you can look this up right now. It's still on tactics.tools at least for another week or so. It's like the 11th most built item was Gunblade. Yeah. Stats only tell you what is, not what can be. And so, but that's not to say, stats are wrong or anything like that. Like, it's not binary. And that's one of the hard parts about discussing this is like, sometimes stats are dead right, but sometimes stats are not. And so, but people aren't always nuanced and they're not always looking for their game to be a deep educational, philosophical debate about what's playable and what's not. Sometimes they want to just log in and win. And so you have to serve that player motivation. So TLDR here is, while there are definitely some people who would love it if we got rid of stats, me included personally, realistically, it would do bad things for making our game more approachable, making our game more social and to share like how your results went. And so probably not something that's going to happen. I just don't see it. And like I said, every game right now in the industry is going through this. So every single game. I bet if I went and looked at like Street Fighter 6, there's probably stats on like how many champions have reached the upper echelon rank, and I call them champions, characters, fighters, whatever. And there's probably the tier lists and things like that. So okay. Next question is, how do I feel about the Nintendo situation? And specifically, this person is saying the Nintendo situation as far as price increases, expensive games, $80 games, things like that. And this is where I don't know how old the person asking this question is, but I'm almost 42. I've been in the industry for a long time, not just as a developer, but even just as a player, right? I remember being 8 years old, 10 years old, SNES prices, 64 prices, GameCube prices, etc., etc., etc. And no, this isn't some debate about inflation. That's not where this is going. But what I will say is you can pinpoint certain parts in the industry where companies have went, value is our strategy, right? This is Nintendo in the GameCube era, where you could get a GameCube for $99. And there are other times where companies have been, no, it's not value, it's profits. Example of this would be PS3, $599 US, $599 US, and how much damage that did after the PS2. They thought they were riding high, and they thought they could get away with a $599 US console, and it kind of bit them, So this is not a new thing. This is whatever business executive is running the company at the time, thinking they've got a new strategy. Because something I've noticed is that, man, businesses are really bad at looking at patterns in the past. But, something I've seen so far is that a lot of these business execs will go, what is the maximum we can push this to maximize profits while still being accessible? I think Nintendo is probably looking at the success of the Switch. They're looking at PlayStation 5 sort of meh, especially in Japan. They're looking at Xbox as not existing. And they're sort of going, you know what? We can probably do this. We can probably have a little bit more expensive and have our profit margins be right about here. And we'll see. We'll see if it works. As a consumer, the reality is with anything, and this is not just true of video games, this is just true of like cars and luxury goods and whatever, is yes, you may want something, but you wanting it doesn't dictate the price, right? You have to make a decision if the value proposition is worth that price, right? So for example, I'm looking at like Mario Kart, and I know how much I play Mario Kart, which is a little. Is Mario Kart worth $80 to me? And yes, I know it's not $80. I think that's one of the like $70 or $60 ones. But I'm like, is Mario Kart worth $80 to me? Nah. I don't play Mario Kart that much. I'll probably play the game like 20 to 30 hours. I don't need to spend 80 on that. I can wait. And it's the kind of game that, yeah, Nintendo games don't go on sale that often, but it'll go to like 40 at some point, and we'll play Mario Kart pretty casually. And I don't have the FOMO of like, oh my God, Mario Kart's going to teach me a bunch of new game mechanics. I got to go try it. So like, I can wait on Mario Kart. Because that's one of the other things, is that gaming inherently, there's something about the like social factor where players feel the need to play everything when it's brand new. And so there's this like, I need to play it right when it comes out, but I don't want to wait for a price drop. And like, especially with PlayStation games, that's wild because those price drop so fast. But anyway, so TLDR with me, Mario Kart, I can wait. But like Donkey Kong Bonanza, kind of excited to try. And so you know what? I'll pay it this time, and that's a decision I'm making, And every consumer is going to have to make that decision. Halfway point, woohoo! Every consumer is going to have to make that decision for themselves, and we'll see what impact that has on the bottom line, right? And from a business side, it's such an interesting thing because it's like, let's take it to this full spectrum, right? How many copies of Donkey Kong Bonanza would they sell if the game was $10? Let's say, I'm going to make up a number here. Let's say 10 million. Okay, it's $100 million. How many would they sell if it was $20? Well, let's say they lose $1 million there. Now they're only going to sell 9 million. Well, now that's 100. I'm probably doing my math wrong here. 180 million. So they just made $80 million more dollars by making it $20 more expensive, right? Fast forward this all the way to, let's make it $100. Well, how many copies are they going to sell? 1.5 million? If it's $100, 2 million? I'm betting they're banking on like 3 million. Well, 3 million times $100 is 300 million. So their profit margins are still higher despite only selling, 1/10 or 30% of what $10 game would do. And that's like, I'm being overly simplistic here. But the point is, someone has made this decision and evaluated that, nope, if we put it at $80, this will keep our profits high and not do damage. That's the decision they've made. So it's interesting. I look at games, like for example, if Smash Brothers Ultimate was $80 and came with the DLC characters, I'd buy that in a heartbeat. Or a lot of people talk about GTA 6, and if it was $100, which is funny for me, I'm not a GTA fan. So like, I'm not paying $100 for GTA 6. But if you're some streamer that wants to be there day one and play GTA online and whatever, you're paying the $100, right? So, yeah, and that's just how like businesses and transactions work, right? Is they set the price, you decide if it's worth it. And so their total sales will drop. Like, that's just factually true. But will it hit their revenue? I'm skeptical. And I mean, you can see this in, not riot prices for their microtransactions, right? It's like, if you sell a skin for $30 and you sell a skin for $100, what are the difference in total sales? And how much does that do to your revenue, But the part a lot of people don't consider is the long-term audience loyalty, right? Like, let's say, for example, I made my own company and we sold a game for $10. And yeah, our profits were lower, but 10 million people all of a sudden love our game. And then you make another game and, maybe it's not as good, but it's still good. You sell it for $10. You create a brand loyalty. And brand loyalty has its own value as well. And again, a lot of the newer business people, they don't think long-term. They think short-term profits. They don't think long-term brand loyalty. And so all this to say is that someone gets to make that decision. But yeah. TLDR, if I was CEO of Nintendo, I probably would have stuck at 70. I don't think I would have gone to 80. But maybe that makes me a coward, But I get it, and I can at least logically understand why they did it. So, okay. This one, before I go into this one, today's Mort Thoughts. Today's when we're going to start talking about 14.5. 14.5 is some of the item reworks. And this is a big deal. I'm not going to be around to patch rundown these, but I got some item reworks coming to the core item system, which is always scary. So in my Mort Thoughts today, I'm going to be talking about what that means, why we do these, sort of the risks and pros and cons. But yeah, I think the one I'm the most excited for is Shiv becoming an artifact. So yeah, look forward to that. Anyway, the next question is, how do you balance work and family life? Do you have like a schedule, or how does that work? So this one is tricky and will depend on your situation, but there are two things I wanted to say about this one. The first one is that I forget who it was, but someone was doing a guest speak at Riot, and they said, there are 3 important things in our life: work, family, and friends, when it comes to our social interactions. And unfortunately, you only have the capacity, the mental capacity, to be good at 2 of them. So at some point, you will have to make a sacrifice as to which one you're not going to be good at. And for me, the one I'm really bad at is friends. I don't really see my friends that often. I think maybe once or twice a year if I'm lucky. In a bad year, it's less than that. I've got a friend who's up here in Washington. He and I have been meaning to get together. I think the last time we talked was in January. I was like, oh yeah, let's get together. It's May. Still haven't got together. So, but because I've chosen work and family to be my 2. And so you have to make that decision for yourself. If you're young, it's probably work and friends. But at some point, if you want to start a family, something's got to go. And usually, because we all require revenue to keep our, roof over our head and fed, work doesn't usually end up the one being cut. Now, if you're somehow a quadrillionaire, great, you can cut work. Or if you have a job that you can get away with, like doing the bare minimum, you can just, and again, I'm no shade to any particular job. I'm just going to throw out a make-believe job here, but I don't know, if you're a bank teller, and you show up and you just do your job and that's it, and you're happy with where you are, you can maybe put that as your bad one and still do the job, but not necessarily be great at it, So that's that. And like I said, I've made the decision that I am going to do that, prioritize work and family. The second thing here is that I have made an agreement with my wife, and the way we do it is I make enough that she doesn't have to work. Okay, that's step one. And in order to do that, we've always agreed, we came to a mutual agreement that I will give 100% or more at work, and she will understand that, because by doing that, that allows her to not have to work. And she's like, I'll take that trade. I might see a little less of you than I'd like, but I get it. And I get why you're doing it. It's so you can be great at your job, keep getting raises and promotions, and that's important. But the condition is that you cannot miss important things. So for example, I have never, traded work for a birthday or, anything like that. Like, my God, if I ever miss my kid's birthday, she'd kill me, rightfully so, because the priority list is, kids' important dates, or like my daughter used to be in dance, and I would go to every one of her dance recitals. You don't miss those things, that's priority one. Priority two is work, and then priority three comes back to family, where it's like, okay, with leftover time, then it's like, hey, I'm going to take my daughter to the movie because it's been a little bit since we've hung out. Or I'm going to make sure we all watch some TV together at the end of the day. But having that sort of clear prioritization can really help. And so when I have to go to LA for a week, it's like, yep, is what it is. But I think if you looked at my total schedule, if I were to post my schedule online and go, this is how much I'm working and this is how much I spend with family, Twitter would probably rip me apart, and they'd be like, you're a terrible dad. You're barely spending any time with your family. But again, that's a conscious decision and trade-off that my wife and I have made that we're happy with. And so if you have a family, you and your partner are just going to have to agree on what is that line. And then the other thing is, don't break it, right? Again, if I ever missed anything important, she'd kill me. So Mother's Day was this weekend, and if I had done nothing for Mother's Day and went to the doubles event, she'd be pretty pissed at me. But instead, Saturday morning, since I wasn't streaming, I had my daughter babysit. I took my wife out. We had fun together for about 4 hours. I said, Happy Mother's Day. She felt loved. Good. And then Sunday when I go, hey, I'm leaving for the entire day to go to this TFT event, she goes, okay, I get it. You're Mort. You gotta do these things. And you made me feel loved on Mother's Day. No worries. So yeah, that's the answer. Try to balance it out. All right, we're getting to the point where I do the uphill, but I had one more question. Oh, that's a hard one. I don't know if we're gonna get into that one today. I might have to save that one for tomorrow. That one's a longer one. So there you go. It's Tuesday. Like I said, for whatever reason, this is a slow week for me. So it's kind of nice. I just get to focus on TFT. Since I did a lot of the 14.5 stuff yesterday, today I'm going to dive into set 15. It's time to do because the set's getting to the point where it's pretty locked in, pretty solid. Team's working on the mechanic. But it's time for me to go in and look at every champion one by one, see if there's something that's being missed, see if there's anything we need to improve. But it's feeling pretty good. We're ahead of schedule on the set, which is good. So that'll be my day, which again, I like this, just diving into TFT and looking at it. That's a fun day for me. I only have 2 15-minute meetings and that's it, which is great. So pretty happy with that. And yeah, like I said, some of the item rework stuff's going to come out today, but I'm going to try really, really hard to not read player reactions to the item thing. Now, again, my normal instinct here in the past would have been have Twitter open, have Reddit open, start reading comments, see how people are reacting to it, see if there's any. But like, I don't want to read fear, and I don't want to read people going, "Why are they reworking this? That's just going to nerf this champion into oblivion because I think that champion likes that item," even though I've already meticulously simmed all of these things. I'm going to trust that I'm good at my job. I'm not going to worry about it. So if something important comes up, it'll get flagged to me. But I have to fight that instinct to just read the online stuff. So, yeah. All right, cool. I think this is where we're going to end for today. These are usually ending up about a half an hour. Let me know, by the way, if you guys think I should make these not unlisted but listed. I'm a little nervous about that. It might be fine if I just never read the comments. But I don't know. I'm enjoying the fact that the people who actually want this content are the ones seeing it right now. So I might give it a bit. I don't know. And then the last thing is I finally got a time frame on the curveball, and I got to figure out what that means for the future. So that's a whole other question I got to dive into. So, all right, time walking uphill. I'm going to end it here. Hopefully y'all have a great day. Well, this has been Walk the Dog with Mortdog. Until next time, take it easy.